What's up, Estes Park? Hope you are doing well. In this video, we're going to be breaking down Etude number 2 in the Portraits in Rhythm book. Make sure to check out the practice videos for this as well. There's one at full speed and one at 75% speed so you can hear how some of this stuff sounds and play along with it. Alright, so in Etude number 2, we are in a 3/8 time signature here. And it says that the 8th note gets the tempo marking of 144, which is around 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So one thing you need to be aware of is that essentially the 16th notes here are going to be functioning as what we're used to 8th notes being, and the 32nd notes are going to feel like 16th notes because this is in 3/8 and not 3/4. So don't let the notation kind of screw you up there. Mezzo forte is our opening dynamic here, so again we're going to play around kind of this middle zone, not again dead center and not on the very edge, kind of around this middle area for that medium dynamic there. Because this is in 3/8, any chance we can get to help emphasize this meter of 3 is really going to help this piece move along. So I like to do that by any time I have a note that arrives on a downbeat, because there is a decent amount of syncopation in these first couple of measures. I like to accent that downbeat a little bit more than the rest of the notes. So kind of check out how that sounds and listen to just the little bit of accent I'm giving the downbeats there. So it's very slight, like extremely slight, but I'm just adding a little bit of extra weight to that note to help keep this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 moving along. Listen to how that sounds as I continue to do it through this passage here. So it's very slight. If anything, I'm just adding a little bit of stick height to make that meter work there. All this stuff is in the mezzo forte range, so I'm keeping it in that same zone. When we get to the third line, this pianissimo offbeat phrase, I'm treating all of these offbeats with my left hand, and I'm actually keeping this still in the same zone, maybe a little bit more towards the center, because we are going to rapidly be changing dynamics. You see all these forte pianos happening, and then when we get to line 4, we actually have a lot of these forte pianos kind of playing this phrase here. Right, we have that sort of thing happen a lot within those measures, so I want to keep all of this in the same zone. I am treating all of these offbeats with my left hand. So if I'm starting from the third measure in the third line there, 1, 2, 3. When I get to those 30-second note phrases of ba-da-da, 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 I am alternating my sticking there. I'm not keeping it all right-hand lead. So we should alternate those to allow for the consistency of the dynamic to take place and not have our right hand have to do so much more work than our left hand there. When we get into, or one thing that should be noted with these accents, like starting in the third line, we should, in theory, be treating all of these as full strokes. Like, there's no reason to do any of these as downstrokes. So again, if I'm starting from the third measure of that third line, 1, 2, 3. You see how I'm allowing that right hand to freely do these full strokes? Even though it has all the time in the world to play its notes there, we still want to practice good technique and get a nice open sound with that and not dig in the accents like that. It gets a much sharper and not as open and nice sound there. So then we have the crescendo taking place on line 5. And then we're into these 30-second note phrases here. Again, I'm keeping everything right-hand lead here. And if you naturally allow your hands to alternate on all these ba-da-da, 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 you should naturally come out with your right hand on that second measure of line 5. So just make sure that that sticking is correct. We do need to start that phrase, second measure of line 5, at the forte with our right hand to keep this all right hand lead. When I do get to the last measure in the 5th line, this phrase, I am doing all of these as right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left. To allow my right hand 8th notes to just keep trucking along there. All right, actually technically 16th notes in this, but then we have the diminuendo taking place over those 2 bars. Then we have the sforzando that actually happens in the middle of that diminuendo, which is kind of crazy. This just means that we need to have a sudden louder sound take place within this phrase. So if I'm starting from the last measure in the 5th line, I'm going to play the 4-measure phrase, listen to the diminuendo happen, and then I'm going to quickly on that sforzando have a little bit more sound happen. Kind of hear what's going on there. So it's just a slight increase of sound on that sforzando to allow that diminuendo to keep taking place. On these buzz rolls, I'm treating these as 6 tuplets, essentially. So if we're going 1, 2, 3, my hands are thinking for that buzz roll there. And again, it decrescendos there, diminuendos, all the way down to piano on this edge stuff for the 6th line right there. All right, so we're now at all of this edge stuff here in these 16th note phrases here with these very short buzz rolls thrown in here. Now I'm treating all of these short rolls as 30-second notes. So if I were to play this phrase without any rolls in it, my hands are actually technically doing this. They're technically playing that, but I'm just allowing those 30-second notes to be the buzz rolls in there, those short buzz rolls. And you can throw in some double lefts in here to keep this all right-hand lead if you want, or just let it alternate. If I were to play this all right-hand lead, it would look and sound like this. Up to tempo, that does put a little bit more work on your right hand through all this stuff, though. So I think both ways are fine. If it feels comfortable alternating it, go for it. If you want to stick with right hand lead, you can do that as well. In line 7, we have these super weird staccato rolls. So a staccato, as we know, means short and separated. So this just means that these rolls need to have some separation between them. So what I'm actually doing for this is I'm using both sticks, kind of like bzz, 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 just doing a quick little roll to have some separation in between that. Listen to how line 7 sounds here. So essentially in all these rolls I'm going just 2 short buzzes to get this to happen. Listen to line 7 again. Another option you could do is actually just press both of your sticks into the drum at the same time. That would sound like this if I played that phrase like that. And so that definitely does get a staccato sound there. I just prefer the quick alternating to get that phrase. When we get to this forte section where we have the decrescendo on the last measure of line 7 here, I'm keeping all of these dynamic changes in the same zone, just a little bit off center here. Because these dynamic changes happen so quickly, I want to keep the same character of sound, so I'm treating them all in the same area of the head. That last crescendo getting up to fortissimo, we really need to make happen very quickly to get up to this fortissimo dynamic. So it's going to be pretty extreme to get up to that fortissimo dynamic. If I were to play this nice and slow, this decrescendo and crescendo phrase, last measure of line 7 here. That last crescendo is the most important one to make sure that we are really allowing that to reach the fortissimo dynamic there. Now we're entering into all of these phrases with these drags here, these drags and roughs. So as much as possible, I'm keeping these drags right hand lead. So my left hand is the one that's doing the doubles in there, the buzz for the drag. Because we are playing this in an orchestral style, these drags need to be closed, meaning that I'm actually technically kind of just doing almost a short buzz to get this to happen. So the grace notes I'm almost treating as a buzz there, as opposed to the open rudimental style, where you can clearly hear that rhythm there. So all of these drags I'm playing as closed, and I'm trying to keep them right hand lead throughout this phrase. Listen to how this sounds a little bit slower. So there are some little double lefts and double rights that you need to throw in there to allow these drags to stay right hand lead, but definitely try to keep them the same lead hand whatever you choose there. Then we immediately have to go down to the edge for these roughs on the last measure of line 9. I'm playing a lot of these flammed phrases, left hand lead, to allow my right hand to continue leading through these drags. So if I'm starting from the pianissimo there, last measure in line 9, when I get to those flams, I'm actually playing them as flam taps. So that first flam on line 10, I went left, left. So left hand flam and then left hand tap there. Again, just to allow my right hand enough time to prepare for those drags again. Listen to how that sounds again. So as much as possible, I'm playing those flams as flam taps sticking to allow that right hand to stay leading there. Then we get back up to mezzo forte in line 11, so we got to change our zone again. This is by far the hardest measure in the entire etude right here. It's the second measure of the 11th line. Oh my goodness, you have these 30-second notes, and then you have to sneak in a drag right before you get to the fortissimo beat 1, which is very challenging. There's two ways you can approach this if you can't execute this at the full speed. Well, at the full speed, if we play this like technically correct, if I start from line 11, listen to how these two measures sound. Now up to tempo. You can hear, I can just barely squeak in that drag to get to beat 1. But I was keeping all the notes in there. I wasn't changing anything. There's a method you can do here to cheat that last 30-second note a little bit. And just play that last 30-second note as the drag if you can't physically get your hands to execute that drag in time. That would sound like this. If I'm starting from the beginning of line 11 again, this is the cheater way. So that last left-hand 30-second note I'm actually just treating as the drag, and up to tempo it sounds like this. This ensures that you can execute this drag on beat 1 and not let it affect the time. But again, it's technically incorrect because we have cheated that last 30-second note. So 2 ways to approach it there. You can consider that. Then we get to a fortissimo section here. Again, I'm trying to keep all of these roughs right hand lead. And then this last line of line 12 here, try to keep all this stuff right hand lead. That last accent should be the loudest note of the entire etude because we are at fortissimo and it is accented. So I hope this helps you work on some of this stuff in etude number 2.